Takumi Sakurai. Of course, we are going to get those teams on screen shortly as they hop into team preview. Alvin is going for a very electric-type heavy combination. We have the Tapu Koko and the Alolan Raichu, one of those classic combinations that you might have predicted at the start of the metagame, alongside Clefairy, Snorlax, and that Metamence that we've been seeing a lot, the Salamence and the Metagross. But up against this kind of electric-focused, it looks like Takumi may have brought the answer in Marowak.
Well, I love Takumi's team for one reason. He's taken this double dragon concept that people picked up on, but he's not used
a little different.
One of the dragons that's commonly seen with them. In most cases, it's Garchomp and Salamence together. In this case, it's Garchomp and Goodra working together. Now, you mentioned that Marowak being a fantastic answer, of course, to the electric-type attacks. You switch in that Lightning Rod, up that attack, and really dampen the potential power of something like a Raichu and Tapu Koko lead, which has been very, very potent when used together. Of course, Surge Surf for the ability relying on electric terrain, and only one way to change the terrain from Takumi's side. So he's going to be relying on that Tapu Fini, which even without electric terrain, you don't want to be switching that into electric type attack. So I think that's going to have to partner up with the Marowak throughout this game. And Goodra could be a good adaptation here as a very naturally high special defense. So as long as it's coming in on those electric type attacks rather than potential dazzling gleams from the Tapu Koko on Alvin's side, then he could be in a really good position. But I want to see, I feel Takumi has the options to make the plays how he wants them.
All right, well, here we are in game 1 of round 5 Swiss here in Anaheim for the Video Game World Championships. Again, the winner of this match will advance to day 2. The loser will have to win one more at a later date. Takumi is going to lead with his Garchomp and Tapu Fini, getting the misty terrain out on the field. Not helping Garchomp, but maybe nice to just have it to protect some status. But it will be the Clefairy and Snorlax for Alvin. Clefairy obviously giving Snorlax even more bulk.
Well, Clefairy is a real friend to Snorlax, and it's going to start off by just keeping it as safe as possible from any attacks.
Absolutely. Clefairy's like, I got this one, Snorlax.
I've covered it. You're good.
Fortunately for Takumi, he did opt for the Rock Slide on Garchomp to deal damage to both Pokemon, but Tapu Fini going for the Taunt, going to make sure Clefairy can't do any more shenanigans like that. And the flinch, tragically, we've seen it over and over again this tournament. That flinch on Rock Slide can really change the pace of the game here. Yeah,
well, we see Rock Slide coming out from this Garchomp, putting him in a good position, opening up the door to those flinches. It's all well and good keeping your Pokemon around with something like the Friend Guard helping out, and of course Follow Me to redirect attacks, but it really doesn't matter if you can't capitalize off it by not moving. Intimidate is certainly going to help out against this Garchomp, though. He's maybe establishing it as a bit of a problem already.
Yeah, Garchomp with that Intimidate now going again for the Rock Slide, dealing some damage to Salamence and Snorlax, a little bit less this time around. Tapu Fini does go for the Taunt again onto Snorlax, trying to prevent Alvin from setting up. Recognizing that, Alvin does decide to just go for a return back onto Tapu Fini, but of course Tapu Fini is very bulky there, not taking too much damage from that because Snorlax has not had the opportunity to set up.
No, Snorlax, knowing that the Taunt is there, Alvin made a very smart play to not use one of these setup moves, and that I think is what Tapu Fini's here to do, to basically try and shut down some other members of teams. In Alvin's case, the Clefairy was forced out. The switch into Salamence was very helpful, the Intimidate slowing Garchomp down, but Salamence and Garchomp have this very interesting matchup, and Garchomp doesn't want to be on the receiving end of a potential Dragon Pulse.
Garchomp's like, get me out of here. I don't want any of that. I don't care if the misty terrain is up. I'm out.
Yeah, Celesteela much prefers it.
Celesteela in for the Garchomp and Tapu Koko in for the Salamence on Alvin's side. The Electric Surge will reset that terrain there, boosting the power of Tapu Koko's electric-type attacks. A Moonblast coming out from Tapu Fini will connect with Tapu Koko. That's so much damage. Had to be a critical hit and gets a special attack drop. The rolls going Takumi's way here, while Snorlax just goes for a return onto Celesteela, which Celesteela is just happy to tank all day, every day.
Well, that's Celesteela and Koko coming in. Very, very interesting. The Tapu Koko, of course, in a fantastic position. It's got its own terrain up. It's against the Celesteela and a Tapu Fini, which it loves to hit with those electric-type attacks. but it took so much damage from Moonblast, and its special attack is coming down a little bit. So will still be able to deal a lot of damage while the terrain's in play. You do have to wonder with the Garchomp and a potential Marowak in the back how much Tapu Koko could do, and I think Alvin's not so keen on playing that game right about now.
Yep, Alvin switches out for Clefairy just to scout and see if Takumi did bring the Marowak, but he did. So smart switches there from Alvin, not getting baited into falling for any kind of Lightning Rod shenanigans. Snorlax avoids the muddy water from Tapu Fini this time around. So just Clefairy is going to take some damage there, but of course Clefairy is very bulky, gets that accuracy drop onto Clefairy, but I don't think that Alvin's going to be doing too much attacking there. High horsepower does a little bit of damage back to Tapu Fini, and the taunt wears off. So Tapu Fini, we do know it has taunt, but it can only taunt one of these Pokemon at a time, and Clefairy already showed Follow Me.
Yeah, and he's in a situation basically back where he was in turn 1 with some damage in play, but he wants to taunt Clefairy to stop the Follow Me's. Marowak was shown a little bit early by Takumi here, thinking he was going to be bringing it in to deal with the Tapu Koko. Very smart play from Alvin to remove that Tapu Koko from play and try and get it in later, but he has to remove Marowak to really be able to capitalize on that. That's going to be such a problem if it's sticking around.
Absolutely, and speaking of problems, Celesteela out on the field for Takumi. Snorlax is going to use that Belly Drum to max out its attack, but we just saw high horsepower and return, and you know, Celesteela likes to take those. Even if Snorlax has that max out attack, it's, you know, high horsepower can't touch Celesteela, and Celesteela is not too worried about any kind of returns here. Marowak with some damage back onto Clefairy with that Flare Blitz. Picks up that KO. A lot of damage coming out from Marowak.
That's a lot of damage coming out from the Marowak on Takumi's side of the field, and that thick club item that it always carries really makes it a really dangerous offensive threat. I think the Snorlax is what Takumi needs to deal with now. He sees the problem. The Belly Drum finally got up from Alvin, so now it's an offensive threat. And he's going to be in a position where he needs to try and deal with that. We have seen all of his Pokemon, so he only has to keep Marowak around for the benefit of Tapu Koko. There's no Alolan Raichu in play that he has to deal with in this instance. Marowak's big damage reduced a little bit by the Intimidate, so all hands on beating the Snorlax. This has been a common theme towards the end of this season. And Celesteela's in a decent position to do it, but you may see the Salamence try and answer that with a solid Flamethrower.
Yep, it looks like that might be Alvin's idea, switching Salamence in. Takumi is going to switch out Marowak for Tapu Fini, wants to protect that Marowak, trying to make sure that that is still around for when Tapu Koko comes out. The Flamethrower will connect with Celesteela and deal a good amount of damage there.
That's a lot of damage.
Critical hit again. Over 50% of damage had to be a critical hit. Nothing deals over 50% to Celesteela. And because of the critical hit, that maxed out return able to pick up the KO onto Celesteela. So Alvin, getting the roll when he needed it, picks up that KO.
Well, it's very, very close because return after a Belly Drum does so much to Celesteela. Actually gets around that 50% mark. So without the critical hit, could have come down to it. He's just secured it. And I think swinging the momentum very nicely back in his favor. There's not much. When you look across Takumi's team, we know, of course, the Marowak's remaining in the back. But we know Snorlax has high horsepower. So it's really on the back of this Garchomp to try and deal with the Snorlax.
Yeah.
And that's something that he can't do so freely. While Salamence is also on the field, he's not intimidated, which is nice. But he needs to be picking the right targets, especially with these protects from Alvin.
Yeah, has to be worried that he doesn't pick a target into a protect, and it looks like that is exactly what he did.
He really has. We see the Tectonic Rage from this Garchomp. You don't throw Tectonic Rage at a Salamence. It's a flying type. And so this Snorlax is probably going to almost waste Takumi's Z-move by comfortably taking it, only taking a quarter of the usual amount of damage that it would. So really smart to show off that fourth move on Snorlax, and we see an absolute pittance of damage in the Snorlax's direction.
Also showing off the Bulldoze on Salamence from Alvin's side. Usually see that alongside the Metagross, but on its own, it is a perfectly fine method of speed control, dropping both Tapu Fini and Garchomp's speeds, while Tapu Fini will connect that Moonblast onto Salamence. Deals a lot of damage back, but not enough to pick up the KO just yet. So those speed drops will allow Salamence to continue to deal some damage against this Tapu Fini and Garchomp.
Well, Salamence is in a really good position now, because after the speed drop from Bulldoze, it's outspeeding Garchomp. We do know that the Misty Terrain's in play, but Garchomp, you know, is going to be able to take a lot of damage, and it doesn't want to take that for multiple turns, really.
Yep, the Dragon Pulse coming out from Salamence deals some damage to that Garchomp, that Misty Terrain, helping out quite a bit. Rock Slide will connect onto both Salamence, and Snorlax gets the KO onto Salamence, hit Snorlax as well. So now we get the best part, waiting for the flinch. No flinch there, just a high horsepower into Tapu Fini, pick up that KO as well. So now Takumi is forced to bring out his Marowak, while Alvin is forced to send out his Tapu Koko.
So this Snorlax is actually very, very interesting for a number of reasons. It has 2 offensive moves, just the belly drum to set up, no recycle to keep it sticking around. And after a singular bulldoze, it was actually outspeeding the Tapu Fini, which is so important in this matchup, because not often can Snorlax outspeed with such a minimal amount of speed control. You have to look at how Alvin and his group that he works with have trained this team to basically try and get the most out of Snorlax after the belly drum.
Yeah.
Tapu Koko is able to probably just start tidying up with something like the Dazzling Gleam.
Yep, that Dazzling Gleam able to clean up here. Garchomp goes down. Marowak, of course, resists it, but is not going to be resisting this high horsepower from Snorlax. Maxed out with that belly drum, connects, and that's game 1 to Alvin. And a critical hit, just that gravy on top.
Just to really finish the game nicely for him. I think there's something so interesting about Alvin's Snorlax that we just can't ignore.
Yeah.
Outspeeding Tapu Fini, outspeeding Marowak, the Marowak with no speed control affecting it. That is something that's so important to look at. Are they taking a quicker Snorlax?
Fast-lax.
Turbo-lax is the correct term, Evan. But simply put, you know, that's such an inventive change to bring to the World Championships. And it means you're not relying on Tailwind or Trick Room to set up just a single bulldoze, which is multifaceted in how it can be used. I think fantastic play from Alvin. Right decisions in Team Preview to leave Alolan Raichu at home. Played very well from an early setback with things being taunted and unable to set up. But once Tapu Fini showed the taunt, he played fantastically around it.
And now heading into game 2, we are back in Team Preview. Both of these players have to decide what they're going to do now. Of course, Alvin successfully baited out the Marowak in that first game. Use those smart switches to figure out that Takumi did bring Marowak. Going to have to wonder if Takumi leaves Marowak back home, which opens Alvin up to bringing the Raichu and Tapu Koko combination. Seems a little bit risky for game 2, but he is up 1, so may be able to take that risk if Takumi felt that Marowak wasn't pulling its own weight.
He dangled the Tapu Koko in there for him. We saw Takumi nibble right at it. Then immediately the rod was pulled out, and it was just so tough that Tapu Koko came in at the end, didn't need to throw out any electric type attacks because Celesteela was already dealt with, and then it was able to just use Dazzling Gleam, which is a perfectly acceptable move on a Tapu Koko.
Well, it is going to be the Tapu Koko and Snorlax lead up against the Tapu Fini and Garchomp on Takumi's side. Of course, the Misty Terrain being set up as Tapu Fini is the slowest Tapu on the field. So going to be, you know, similar to what we saw before. Likely trying to just get that Snorlax in as good a position as possible with offensive pressure this time.
Trying to bait out, I think, the Marowak again as well. And maybe just catch it with a high horsepower immediately. If you look at the way the board's set up, Tapu Koko doesn't want to deal with Garchomp, but it also has a really good matchup against Tapu Fini. So you think about Takumi's board position, use Garchomp, but protect Tapu Fini. So if that's what's switching out, Snorlax is in a position to maybe try and get some high horsepowers in there. Won't be a switch to start this turn.
No, it will be a protect to start this turn as Tapu Koko just goes for the Dazzling Gleam here. Just going to get damage off onto Takumi's Garchomp. So much damage there. Almost picking up the one-hit KO. Garchomp just barely hanging on. Will be able to fire back with an Earthquake. Connects with both the Tapu Koko and the Snorlax. Garchomp, your spread move was good, but mine is better. Picks up the KO onto Tapu Koko and deals a little bit of damage back to that Snorlax as well. Like you mentioned, Snorlax just going for that high horsepower will just clean up the Garchomp here. Take a little bit of rough skin damage for its troubles.
Yes, but very smart play, I think, from Alvin to acknowledge the Garchomp is a problem. We did see, of course, that it wasn't getting knocked out comfortably by Dragon Pulse because of the Misty Terrain from Tapu Fini. So he found another way around it. Dazzling Gleam did a whole heap of damage. And that's an inkling about what item that Tapu Koko is holding, especially the ones in this matchup. I think without that threat coming in from the Garchomp, both the Pokemon on Takumi's side of the field right now are a little slower, a little bulkier. But Alvin's got a pretty bulky side on his own. Snorlax, of course, defense is helped out by the Friend Guard. It's going to be a nightmare to take down.
Yeah, but Takumi does have the option of using that Celesteela with that Leech Seed to just slowly whittle down the Snorlax. As we've seen, it does not have the option to continue to recover. One of the ways that Snorlax does like to beat Celesteela.
That is the big problem, I think, with this faster Snorlax, is if somebody brings the game to a glacial pace, you're able to answer that. This one isn't. It doesn't have recycle, which we saw was so important in something like the International Championships.
All right, well, the Moonblast connects to the Clefairy, not dealing that much damage. Snorlax just going ahead and belly drumming as well. So Takumi opting not to taunt is going to allow that Clefairy to stick around. The berry has been used on Snorlax now, so recovered all the health it will. The Heavy Slam being more than enough damage to pick up the Clefairy as well. Such a shame to see that cute little Clefairy gets squished by the Bamboo Satellite, and a defense boost for Celesteela is exactly what you want when you're up against a belly drum Snorlax.
Yes, that is absolutely huge. But he's now brought him down to his last 2 already, and that's really good. He's got no switches to worry about. He knows exactly what's going on. And while I think the Celesteela is still in trouble, it's going to take a couple of hits to knock it out. Now, the attention that Celesteela requires opens some doors up for Tapu Fini. That Tapu Fini is going to be a little bit scared after what happened in Game 1, where the Bulldoze connected, and then he was outpaced by the Snorlax after the belly drum and comfortably knocked out. So it's interesting to see how Alvin's going to target this down, if he's going to try and beat the Tapu Fini as quickly as possible, or if he's just going to go for Celesteela with something like a return and a potential fire-type move from Salamence.
It is going to be the Flamethrower from Salamence onto Celesteela. Without the critical hit, not dealing above 50% there. Return from Snorlax goes into the Protect, though. So Celesteela able to get the Leech Seed off, and that is what Celesteela wants. That big old Snorlax has been seeded, and Celesteela is just going to be recovering so much health every turn, and Snorlax can't recover off this chip damage.
It can't recover off the chip damage, and it can't switch out from the chip damage either. It can't reset the Leech Seed.
It is trapped healing its opponent.
It's stuck giving his opponent more health. What a terrible way to go. But this matchup, very interesting. We didn't see the Bulldoze. I think when we saw the Flamethrower, a lot of people would expect the double target, Snorlax to use that belly drum. But Alvin kind of playing it safe, wanting to get damage across the board. Didn't quite work out from that turn, and if Celesteela can protect, then it's going to be guaranteed to need 2 hits without the aid of a critical hit to knock it out. No protecting this turn, though.
Yep, no protect. Celesteela will take another Flamethrower from Salamence. A no critical hit again. Moonblast from Tapu Fini actually going on the offensive this time, targeting down that Snorlax. All that damage is sticking. Snorlax with the high horsepower will connect with Tapu Fini. Not enough to pick up the KO, even after that belly drum. Going to just allow Tapu Fini to heal back up with its Mago Berry, and Celesteela showing its own Flamethrower. It just learned some tricks from that Salamence, able to pick up the KO onto Snorlax. Doesn't even need to wait for the Leech Seed. And Salamence might want to go back to its Pokeball and get prepped for Game 3.
Yes, Salamence definitely not looking too peachy right here. We do know Dragon Pulse is not going to be able to hit Tapu Fini. Flamethrower is not going to be very effective. And, you know, even Bulldoze is going to be so slow at wearing this down. Tapu Fini should be able to just see this game out. And Celesteela, really not too scared of Flamethrowers, seems to be taking them quite comfortably.
Yep, Alvin just checking to see how many Flamethrowers he needs to knock out this Celesteela with those leftovers and Leech Seeds.
Get your calculations in for Game 3.
Gotta get ready for Game 3. Every little bit of information counts. Tapu Fini with the Moonblast onto Salamence, also showing it's about 50% damage there as well. And Salamence losing its special attack as well. Even if you thought that it could deal damage before, it's definitely not now.
No, it's a special attacking dragon, and the drop from Moonblast is interesting. But playing this game out is interesting from Alvin's side, I think, because he does get information out the loss. He knows how much Moonblast does to his Salamence, just in case he wanted to check a potential item on something like Takumi's Tapu Fini, and he also gets to see that last Pokemon.
Yep, did bring Marowak.
The Marowak wasn't shown earlier. He Flamethrowers again. Not so peachy.
Yeah, not great. The Moonblast will pick up this KO, and we are going to Game 3 here.
Oh, this should be a good one, because I love the way he showed the Marowak. He was forced to show it.
Forced into it.
And that's really good information, I think, for Alvin. But it really wasn't relevant once Tapu Koko had been removed from play. So Alvin is still in this mindset where he has to be careful about bringing this double electric type. And the Snorlax, as we brought up, not able to recover off that damage, was kind of kept in check very comfortably by a smart Protect, keeping itself around.
I think you saw in that game too, when Takumi learned that there was no possibility of recovering on Snorlax, he invested a lot more into dealing that damage to Snorlax, knowing that it just couldn't, that it would stick.
It becomes a different kind of ball game. At the moment, you're used to having to worry about Snorlax, but the partners also are wailing on you, and you worry a little bit about Snorlax because if you invest too much time in it and you don't get knockouts, the partner's just taking you out. But there's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel for these players, and different to most Snorlax, which we've seen, where you can't defeat this thing.
Yeah, this one only has 150% HP, not 560%.
Well, that's much better, isn't it?
So much more manageable.
And to make it even easier for himself, I think smart targeting from Takumi to take away that Clefairy when he could. He knew it was going to follow me. He threw the Heavy Slam at it. He threw some other attacks its way and was just able to kind of answer it comfortably. The Moonblast Heavy Slam was enough.
Not wasting time on taunts, just getting it off the field.
It's a lot quicker and a lot more aggressive, and I think that's probably the way to play this matchup. Alvin's team is very much about keeping one or two things in play, helping the Snorlax out. A lot of things going towards helping the Snorlax. And I think getting rid of the Snorlax comfortably was the secret for Takumi in that game.
Absolutely. We'll have to see if Alvin is able to bounce back and have a repeat of Game 1, or if Takumi will be able to keep this momentum alive, as again, we go into Game 3. The winner of this match advances to Day 2, joins our top players from around the world that have been pre-invited for a chance at becoming the world champion. And it's going to be back to the basics, Clefairy and Snorlax for Alvin, alongside the Garchomp and Tapu Fini for Takumi Sakurai.
Yes, and Takumi doesn't quite have the answer to Clefairy in this one as well. I think it's curious to see how this one matches up. In the way he had Celesteela in front of the Clefairy before, I will say Tapu Fini and Garchomp just don't feel as useful, especially when they're forced to attack Clefairy.
Absolutely. Clefairy always wants to be the center of every attention. Garchomp, recognizing that, goes for the Rock Slide once again. Connects with both Pokemon. Tapu Fini has to show the taunt this time. No way to get that Clefairy off the field, just trying to get the taunts now. But Alvin going straight ahead for the Belly Drum this time, unlike in Game 1, able to get this Belly Drum off without flinching. So the earliest Belly Drum we have seen, turn 1, Alvin has all of that offensive pressure.
Yes, and not getting the Rock Slide flinch definitely changes this game a little bit. Of course, Alvin's in a solid position now. Snorlax is able to start knocking things out with big returns, big high horsepowers if something like the Marowak comes in. And Clefairy's in a very healthy position if it could stick around. The taunt is maybe going to force it away from something like the Follow Me. It will have to be switching out. In the same way, Garchomp doesn't feel comfortable in this situation either.
Absolutely. Celesteela is Takumi's choice. Wants to protect that Garchomp for later. Alvin forced to switch out the Clefairy, as you mentioned, for Salamence, getting the Intimidate off onto Celesteela. We already saw that Heavy Slam earlier, going to be cutting into the damage there if Clefairy comes back in. Tapu Fini going for the Moonblast, so Takumi going right on the offensive. Smart prediction there, catches the Salamence on the switch and deals about 50% of the hit points, while Snorlax able to fire back with a return right back into Tapu Fini, pick up that KO. That's no high horsepower, that is a Snorlax return.
Yeah, the same type of attack mode is showing how valuable it is in taking these knockouts. So Celesteela coming in is pretty good for Takumi on a turn where he loses his Tapu Fini. It isn't going to be able to be caught by Bulldoze. Can probably do some decent damage with Heavy Slam, not even to Snorlax though. And that's the biggest concern looking across Takumi's team right now, is where is his Snorlax answer?
Yeah.
We've seen him try and use Tectonic Rage in Game 1. If
he did it into the Protect.
If he goes for Tectonic Rage again, he can't make that mistake. It's not going to be paying off for him.
All right, well, Alvin switches out Salamence, wants to preserve that Intimidate. Also going to switch in the Clefairy to make sure that whatever Takumi does to this Snorlax, it's not going to be as effective. Just the Rock Slide coming out, dealing some good damage to Clefairy, a critical hit, and some extra damage back onto Snorlax. No flinch again, this time return connects with Garchomp. That is a one-hit KO, and now you are seeing the full might of the Belly Drum Snorlax.
Has got going. A Leech Seed is going to slowly wear it down, but you're down to your last two against a pretty healthy still.
Was this turn 2 or turn 3?
This is turn 3. It's been Belly Drum and 2 attacks, 2 knockouts. A very simple scorecard, another notch on the wall there for Snorlax.
It's a very Belly Drum Snorlax thing.
Yes. I mean, Marowak comes in, would usually have a good matchup with the Ghost typing it picked up with its Alola form. But it's not so good with high horsepower in play.
Especially this Turbo Lax, which we've already seen outspeeds that Marowak.
Usually it requires a little bit of help, but Marowak just going to keep itself safe. Celesteela might be able to try and bring this game back, but it's got so much to do against this Snorlax.
Yep, and it's not going to be able to attack the Snorlax just yet because of Clefairy. Celesteela does opt for the Heavy Slam, realizing that it will not be able to attack the Snorlax. Just going to have to deal as much damage as possible, but thanks to that Intimidate, not enough. 6 hit points left on that Clefairy, which means that Snorlax is still going to be protected by the Friend Guard. However, it is starting to get a little low thanks to that Leech Seed.
It's getting there, but I just can't see enough gas in the tank for these Pokemon to get through it. The Snorlax moving before the Marowak means Marowak cannot basically make a move until Snorlax is gone.
Right.
Now, the only way to get rid of Snorlax right now is buy that Celesteela. You've got to buy a lot of time with Leech Seed, and it's not going to matter in this one.
Yep, that's just going to be the high horsepower. Marowak is kicked out of this field. Goes back to Takumi. Celesteela uses that flamethrower, will be able to finally finish off this Clefairy. Those last 6 hit points from that sturdy little fairy. It finally goes down. Celesteela is going to be able to get the Beast Boost now with that defense, so we'll be able to help it out a little bit later on as it faces down this Snorlax, but Alvin has so many options to take out this Celesteela now.
Yes, and if he's bought something like the Tapu Koko in the back, we could have this one done pretty promptly. It's going to be interesting to see him reveal it. There it is.
Tapu Koko out on the field. Alvin is ready for dinner and a nap. Wants to get this over with so he can get prepped up for day 2.
He deserves it. He really does. And his play in this game has been a flawless execution of this team. I know there's a number of players out in the field running it, but it's really been a fantastic play from turn 1. In game 3, he got what he wanted in game 1 and executed it perfectly because there was no flinch. It was such a simple thing he had to get around. But as soon as he got it, the belly drums up. And we saw 3 attacks from Snorlax that connected. We saw 3 knockouts that came with it.
And then a forfeit.
Yes, he didn't even get to knock it out with the Tapu Koko. But Takumi's still in this.
Yeah.
The big thing to note. Alvin, though, looking over the moon with his advancement to day 2.
Absolutely. His friends out in the audience cheering him on as well.